the idea of competing, even if it's just against yourself, to be the best in the things that you are called to make a difference in this world in, is the most rewarding and most important game you can play. Hello, friends. I'm Matthew Pilling, Chief Overthinker with a Pilling Perspective, and this is our second video in the same week. Woot woot! And I want to overthink a little bit about the idea of being competitive. And the reason I want to overthink that, last night as I was driving home, I was listening to the Ed Milet show, and his guest on the podcast was Mauricio Umansky, who is the owner of The Agency, which is the largest real estate agency in the world, very high-end agency. They have been in charge of the sales of really, really high-end homes. And outside of real estate, he's also had a fair amount of success in television, in writing books. He's done a number of things, which is why he's the kind of guest that Ed had bothered to have on the show. And being that they're both as successful as they are, the conversation turned to success itself and some of the keys behind it and what it does to people and that sort of thing. And a question that Ed asked was very specifically, because you have dealt with the sale of some very famous, very successful people's homes, you've been exposed to a number of very wealthy, very successful people. What do you see in common within them? And fairly quickly, Mauricio came back with two things. The first of which was, well, they're competitive. And I can see that. I can see how being competitive will push someone to excel. If I have a talent, but I don't compete with that talent, it's probably not going to be refined as strongly. It's probably not going to be as developed and as honed as if I do become competitive with it. And that's not to say that the only place to find success is in being competitive, but the question gave me pause, or at least the answer to the question gave me pause, because by nature, I am not an extremely competitive person. I am very much more a what can we do to collaborate kind of mentality. What can we do to see that everyone succeeds kind of person. And maybe in saying that, I am showing all of my cards in the sense of revealing that perhaps I look at competition itself as something in a different light than I maybe could or should. I do not think that competitive people are necessarily bad, but I have worked alongside of some very A-type personalities who were extremely competitive, and they were untenable. They were so hard to work with sometimes. Because they always had to win, and winning became the only objective. It came before people, and it didn't strengthen and build relationships. Now, me saying that is not to say that anyone who's competitive is automatically the kind of person I just described, as much as it is to say there can be a tendency to put winning above other things that I prioritize and value more highly. And so I've maybe even shied away from being competitive. But as Mauricio gave that answer, the thought that almost immediately popped into my mind was, does me not being an extremely competitive person mean that I can't be successful? And I can show several things in my life that in some ways would suggest that I'm not successful. If you compare my income to the income of someone like Mauricio or someone like Ed Milet or the kind of clients that they're dealing with, there aren't a lot of things that scream that I'm successful. In what I've done and the efforts that I've put in, I've taken care of my family and I've done all right. But I am not a top contender when it comes to things like income. I've been in certain jobs where being competitive was important. In fact, it's really interesting that these ideas and this knowledge came through listening to the Ed Milet show, because years ago, I tried my hand in finance, and by chance, I was in not only the same company as Ed Milet when he found his success and just really took off, I was within the same overall hierarchy that he was in. We lived in different states. We were not face-to-face all of the time, but I had the chance to attend a few meetings where Ed Milet was the key speaker, or he was the sponsor of the overall event even. And I got to absorb a lot from him before he became the Ed Milet that we know and love today. And as I watched him from afar, I had moments of jealousy. I had moments of immaturity in just thinking, wow, I can't be like him because I'm not like him. And that was in essence a decision I was making. But I also had other moments where I was very inspired by him, and because of his success, felt like if I can simply incorporate some of what Ed is doing so successfully, I could have a fraction or a portion of the kind of success that he's having. But it always pushed boundaries, and personal growth always does push boundaries. So I don't know that it was necessarily wrong that it pushed boundaries, but the boundaries that I felt it pushing were often things that I think in my heart of hearts I had decided were not negotiable. And that's not to say that Ed Milet, being the person he was and is, was wrong, as much as it's simply saying that we are different people. I'm not meant to be Ed Milet. He is not meant to be me, which could also be saying that we're not meant to have the same results and successes in life. And I can be fine with that. But if we're consistently taught that if you see and want something, all you have to do is follow the steps that someone who's already gotten there have taken, which in a lot of ways is sound advice. But if that's all we're ever taught, and it ends up being that we try to fit a mold that is not us, and we try to violate or break things that are at our core and become something that we're not, there are people who have done that, and it's possible. But in most cases, it's not going to end well. And even in those where people who have done that and have grown and changed because of it, it's often going to be the case that those people have abandoned part of who they were to become something different, and different isn't always better. And that may sound like I'm making excuses for myself, and to some degree, perhaps I am. But what I'm really getting at was the overall question that popped in my mind when Mauricio said that the people that he knew as having the external signs of success and a lot of the internal signs of success as well had in common was that they were competitive, and that they were competitive in pretty much all things. My heart kind of sank as I asked, well, does that mean that because by nature I'm not a strongly competitive person, that I can't have success? And that could be a very deflating thought. That could be a very deflating question. But as I've thought about it in the past 24 hours, my thoughts have turned back to a time where I worked with a company where I was a corporate trainer, got to work with a team of very talented corporate trainers. We would often spend a lot of time in each other's classrooms doing what we could to absorb from their teaching style and incorporate the right kinds of things into our own. And it was just an environment of let's grow together. And I have a good friend that I got to work with during those years that once said, Matt, you've fooled me. And I asked, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, I've always seen you as not competitive, in a sense of not needing to one-up other people, not needing to be the one that's in the limelight or win all the time. And yet, as I've sat in your classroom, I've decided that you are what I would call ninja competitive. And I asked him what he meant by that. And he basically said, in the things that matter most to you and the things that you are skilled in, you are very competitive and you want to be the best. And I don't know why I had forgotten that. I don't know why it had slipped from my mind, because I took it as a huge compliment. But in relation to what Mauricio had said, do I have to be excluded from success because I'm not by nature extremely in-your-face competitive? No. Part of the conversation that Ed and Mauricio had outside of just the idea of competition was how they have both built their careers not by focusing on the things that they really needed to strengthen, though they have done some of that, but they have built their careers by focusing on and playing to their strengths. And so maybe they're saying the same thing. If they are as successful as they are because of playing to their strengths, and they are outwardly very competitive when they're within their strengths, yeah, that's going to spill over into some of the things that maybe aren't their strengths, or things that they try that are new and foreign and that sort of thing. But are they not doing the exact same thing that my friend suggested I was doing, and that I've grown to believe we all probably do a little bit of? I can be competitive in the things that matter most, in the things that I feel called to. And in those things, because I have unique gifts, because I have unique experiences, I can be the best. I can be the perfect person for giving the right message. I can be the perfect person for helping the right other person. There are people that I could probably get through to and make an impact with that even an Ed Milet or a Mauricio would not be able to get through to. And I share all of that. I know this was a little longer than normal, to simply say that the game of comparing yourself to others, whether it's based on the idea of competition, which is very much a comparison game, or it be other things that you feel inadequate in, maybe those aren't the things you need to worry about. Albert Einstein very specifically said that we all have genius within us. But at the same time, if you ask a fish to climb a tree, you're not going to find that genius within the fish, and the fish will probably go away feeling not very genius as well. There are things within you that are not exactly within anybody else the way they are within you. In listening to Ed Milet's show for years, have consistently heard him tell people that they're meant to make a difference in this world. And I think the idea of competing, even if it's just against yourself, to be the best in the things that you are called to make a difference in this world in, is the most rewarding and most important game you can play. I hope this idea helps. I hope that as you listen to it, it lifts you. If you know others who need to be lifted in the same way, please share it with them. And as always, please like, please subscribe, and we will see you soon. Thank you for being here.